This is part 2 of how to study, a quick introduction to how to study from Mr. Ruska. I think studying starts with being prepared. I think you can't study unless you're prepared. You have to have in science, at least in biology now, you have to have your lab notebook. That's a required thing. It's like a diary of your learning. That's where you make all your connections and see it allows you to see what you've learned so far. It contains all the information that you have been provided to in class. So we want to have that for sure. You must have all your classwork complete first. How do you study if you have gaps in your knowledge or in your work, right? Because part of it is work, and we're talking about studying. Do work, son, right? Do work. Get the work done first. That's the homework. That's your work in class. And then we can do study, right? We can do study, son. We can go ahead and do that part, right, next. But we have to have your classwork done first. And if you're not done with it, perhaps maybe that's where your time is best spent first. And then you can go back and study. You have to have something else to write on. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. For one, when I study, I have note cards with me. Big ones and small ones. And sometimes I cut them up into different shapes. And sometimes I cut them in half and make them even smaller. Sometimes I have multiple different colored ones, right? I have blue ones and green ones and red ones and white ones. And so I have different ways of doing that, but I always have note cards to write on. Some of you might just be a notebook. I had a roommate in college that I was just in awe of, but at first it didn't start off that way. He had this big, huge roll of paper where the kind that you would normally draw big posters on. I thought, dude, what's that for? And he said, it's for studying. I said, oh, okay. Didn't quite understand what he was going with. And then over the course of the trimester, what I understood is that when he was getting ready to prepare for a test, he pulled about a 4-foot section of paper off the roll. He'd rip it off. He'd go down to the study lounge. Down in the study lounge, get his materials all out. He would start drawing pictures. He was an incredible artist. And he'd draw pictures, and he'd add words, and he'd make connections. So he'd have this big, huge pictorial concept map happening right there on this big sheet of paper. It was really cool. And what I felt bad was that at the end of it all, so that he'd take a test, he would just fold it up and then recycle it. And it was really cool art, so I thought, well, that would be really cool to save, and he just didn't think anything of it. But that's what he did for his study piece, so he needed something bigger to write on. He couldn't use notebook paper. He needed some other space. And then I always say you should have something to add color to your work. Whether it's color pencils, most commonly it's a highlighter, and I say highlighters are probably great because you can do it quickly. You have multiple colors. They're easy. Color pencils work pretty much the same way, but I always say do something to add color to your work. Anything that make things stand out tends to stand out in your mind as well. Now, this next 2 sections are going to be stuff that strategies that can be done and used. Now, many of you probably looking at the screen right now going, that's what I use now. That's what's working for me. And I said, really, it's not working for you. What kind of grades do you have? Could they be better? And the answer is almost always, well, they're okay, or yes, they can be better. And this is some strategies on the board that are timeless, right? They're the stuff that when we think of studying, we think of rereading our notes, reread the book, read the book maybe, reread the passage, and do it as many times as you can until test time. And we're expecting that that's going to be okay. Well, it works just great. If you do it one time at the beginning and one time at the end, it works pretty good. But if that's your only way of doing it, you're wearing out those neural connections, and actually you're not getting anything else out of it after the first time that you do it. For instance, you take notes during class, you go home, and you read through the notes, because most oftentimes when we're taking notes, we're not really reading the notes. We're just taking the notes down so we go back and use them. If we don't go back and reread them, we really haven't done much. But if we go home, and one of our study sessions is to actually read the notes we took in class, that's a pretty good strategy. The next time you study, though, rereading your notes isn't going to do you much good. So we want to stay away from that, except for right off the bat, and then maybe right at the end as you approach test deadline time, you've done all the little work up to it. Now you're looking at, well, what else can I do? And maybe right before a test, you're just going to quick go through your notes make sure you have all the highlighted sections, make sure you see that information one more time, and that usually works okay. So, and unfortunately, this is all we think of. We just think of these three. This is the only thing we can do. And some of you are stuck in there, well, that's what I do. Well, how about change it up? Have some fun with it. No wonder why you don't want to do it, because this is kind of the boring way of studying. Now, on the screen now, what you see is some study strategies you can use when it's just you. Now, notice that this looks a lot more fun than the other section, right? You can see some cool things like flashcards and drawing a concept map and using your natural skills. Now, we'll go through each one of these as the trimester goes, but just a couple right off the bat. Flashcards, you know, they're great for memorizing terms. Put the term on one side, definition on the back on the other side. But maybe you're looking at it and go, well, we're learning the 8 characteristics of living things. How do I do that in note cards? Well, how about putting one of the characteristics on one side and maybe drawing a picture on the back? That's allowed. So you look at the picture and go, that represents made of cells. Or maybe you put an example of what made of cells looks like. And that's definitely something you can be creative with, something that that helps your brain process while you're even creating them. So actually, you could take one session of flashcards, and just by making the flashcards themselves for 10 to 20 minutes, actually is a really good study method. And the next day when you're going to go and study again, you can use those flashcards. Or maybe you use and steal some time in other classes where you pull out your flashcards and you're using those flashcards to get your work done when you have free time. Going back and outlining your notes and highlighting it. Again, you have notes in your lab notebook, taking out another notebook or another sheet of paper and just making a quick outline of the details and then highlighting the important things and getting some details out there is a good strategy. I like the 5-minute dump because A, it sounds funny, and B, it's very effective. I think it's a daily use thing, and really, I think it can be used for all your classes at one time. To start studying for the day, you're going to sit down for 5 minutes, you put the timer on, you're going to go biology, and then you're going to write down for a minute, you're going to write down everything you can remember that we covered in biology, all the important things that you thought happened in biology class. And you'll do that for the rest of your class, and it helps you set up the next piece you're studying. So for the next 10 to 20 minutes for your biology study piece, you're going to go back to those things. Did you make enough connections? Did you get everything that we did for the day? What other connections can be drawn? And then you can use that as a way of figuring out what did you remember, what didn't you remember, what do you have to spend more time on. You can use it right after you study. So for instance, you go, you study for 10 to 20 minutes, you take a 5-minute dump and you take 2.5 of that minutes and you just regurgitate what you do in different words, maybe draw pictures, and then you take the last 2.5 minutes and make sure that you hit everything that you needed to do. I like to do it right before, the night before a test. Just do a 5-minute dump. How much stuff do I know about this unit? I look at my learning targets and I write down as much stuff as I could. You could go to the web. That's linked to check the wiki for resources. There's a lot of cool, fun resources on the wiki or on the web that allows you to do some review and gets you visual. I have apps down there too. Did you check for apps? I found a cool app for the iPad that has a cell, a 3-dimensional cell. You can spin it and slice it and touch it, and you can tell you what organelle it is and what it does. You can see it happen, and it gives you links, and it's kind of a cool app. And again, that's all great multimedia, multidimensional stuff that helps you stick information in your brain. Definition box for key terms. We started off the year talking about what is biology. We had 4 boxes. Again, that would be something that could be used to help with terms. Create test questions. Can you create all the test questions before you take the test? If you can do that and you answer them, you're on your way. And see if you can get yourself to high-level questions. Can you apply? Can you synthesize? That's the kind of stuff that you can do with that. That's a great, great strategy to use. I say post a Jeopardy question to Twitter, and it's not a question, a Jeopardy answer, and see if you can get responses from our classmates, from me, from elsewhere in Twitterville, and as you see if you can't get someone to give you the question. Or maybe you just post questions out there and see if you can't get answers and see how many people can collaborate, and that would be a kind of a fun way of doing things, and it'd be cool to look at it the next morning and see that discussion line and that topic happen on Twitter. That'd be kind of cool. Mnemonics. I'm not a big mnemonic guy, and honestly, the last one I can remember is every good boy deserves fudge when we're learning to read music, but some people are really good at that. Again, it's for some things, not others. Drawing a concept map, having the big term in the middle, or the big concept in the middle, and then drawing the branches off of that, and the branches and how they all connect. We'll practice that a little bit later on this year. Write or sing a song, create your own video, watch a video, and take notes. I mean, there's lots of resources out on YouTube, and part of it I put on my channel, but there's lots of stuff out there that I'm sure I haven't seen, and just take some notes on it. Again, the more active, the more engaged you can be in the material, the better your study session will go. Now, it's always fun to work with a partner. I just took those same strategies and said, now what could you use with a partner? And we'll practice doing some of that stuff. Flashcards are much more fun to use when the person you're working with is helping you. You know, they're holding up the card and they're holding you accountable. Same thing with the rest of it. I think it's a real fun way. I like the last one. Teach your mom, I always say. If you can go and teach your mom what you're learning about, and then she can kind of grasp it, I think you know the stuff pretty well. And that's really much it. You know, that was just some of it. I say do study. You know, it's do work and then do your studying. And that's what this was all about. Hopefully you'll learn some new strategies. You got some techniques that you can apply, keeping your brain fresh and engaged, that your study sessions as short and productive and effective as you possibly can, and that you learn that studying and do study is kind of fun. It's not the same old boring stuff that you once thought it was.